maybe eating your vegetables instead of a burger or anything like that. Well, that's also about delayed gratification, and I think that's very important. And you probably, that's a fun one, Michael. You also probably know the marshmallow test, which basically has proven that kids who basically said, well, I don't want a marshmallow now, and you receive two in 10 minutes from now, well, it has been proven that they are more successful in life in general, just because they are able to say no to something that sounds fun or is delicious today to get more later on. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And also, by the way, I while we were talking, I just ordered your book, so I definitely also from my side would say, well, it's all about the long term, and the same is true for everything that is health related. So I would also highly encourage everyone of Compounding Quality to check out your Substack, because it's amazing.
Yeah, I think I really do think the parallels are just so strong. And when I think about people who work in finance and investment and really a lot of different categories where the focus is on making money, I think
Mm-hmm.
what can sometimes happen is that people will often say, you know, I need to make X amount of money and I'm going to work a lot of time, a long hours, and then I'll get
Mm-hmm.
healthy after I retire.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't quite work like that because it's so much harder to gain back your health after 50 than it would be to invest a small amount of time in it, you know, every single day, even if it's just 20 minutes a day. Um, than trying to just make up for everything. Like you really just can't make up for health if you haven't done anything over the last
Mm-hmm.
30 years. And so I think that that's kind of an important anecdote. One thing I want to ask you too, and this is kind of, we hadn't planned on talking about this, but because you brought up the marshmallow test, I was talking to a friend and he said the marshmallow test is a good metaphor. At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, he pointed out what he calls the third marshmallow problem. And that is when people wait so long that they miss an opportunity. So they, like, let's say you're building a company and you wait and you wait and you wait to sell and you think the longer I wait, the more this number is going to go up. But at a certain point, there becomes an optimal time to sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think about decision making in the context of investment? Like, how is your background in investment shaped how you think about decisions and trying to time things that are hard to time?
Yeah, I think it all depends on what you want in life, obviously. But what I think is important when you talk about investments, and for indeed, let's say that you delay your gratification and delay spending money, and all of a sudden you're 80 years old and you didn't enjoy your money in the end. I think it's very important that you just are aware of it, but also very important that you enjoy the process. The goal in itself and reaching the goal. Let's say you say I want to have 1 million USD, something like that. Well, what many people will notice is once you reach the 1 million USD, your goal, that it isn't what you were looking for in the first place, or then you put your goal to 2 million or 3 million, or it doesn't make you happy. So that's very important, and it's a fun analogy, but basically when I was young I used to play FIFA. I'm not sure whether it's too well known in the US, but basically a football or soccer game.
Mhm,
And me and my brother, we were always trading the soccer players instead of playing
mhm,
the actual game. And in the end, we didn't end up playing the game too much, but we had a lot of money in the game to buy whatever we want. But we just loved the process and the investing and the trading. And I think that's very important in general. So just saying bits like what you mentioned, if I have 1 million, I'm going to do this, or if I reach this, I'm going to do that. Well, I hope you don't, but I'm afraid that if you do, that you will see for yourself that once you reach that goal, that it probably wasn't the thing you were looking for in the first place. It's all about having the goals there. And maybe also, obviously, one thing that I also would like to ask you, Michael, is
mhm.
you are the health expert, right? And for me and a lot of people watching, maybe I'm sitting a lot in front of my desk. And what are some of the traditional health mistakes that you see people making? Obviously, you're sitting a lot every day. how can you improve that? Because for me personally, for example, I go for a run during lunch often, but I also heard from other people that it isn't the most healthy thing to do to sit in a chair for 12 hours and then run for 1 hour. That are healthier options, are there?
Yeah, I think so. I'll go back to what I said about how you can't think that once you work enough and you hit a certain number and then you retire, that this is when I'm going to get healthy. You really want to find small ways every single day to add healthy practices into your life. So I think one thing that I think a lot about is exercise is basically this thing that we had to invent once activity was removed from our lives. So after the Industrial Revolution, you start getting a lot of jobs like we both work now where you sit all day. And we start to notice, oh, people who sit all day, they tend to be unhealthier than people who are still moving. So what we should do is we should figure out some way for those sedentary people to move more. And we invent this thing of exercise, right? It's just doing physical activity for the sake of it. Now, that's been good, but I think what happens is that people have this idea that, okay, when I'm working, I'm going to be completely inactive. And then I have this 30 minutes in my day where I'm active. I personally think that a better approach to take is figure out how can I be more active generally across the course of a day in a way that doesn't really interrupt how I'm living. So I'll give you an example. When I have a work call, instead of taking it sitting, if I can just take that on the phone, I will take that walking. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to go down to the mailbox, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to take the really long way down to my mailbox to try and get in more steps. If I'm at the grocery store, I'm going to carry the basket instead of pushing the cart. It's like how can you add more activity into your day across the course of a day in a way that isn't really going to interrupt your lifestyle? Yes, I still want people to exercise, but there's plenty of data that shows that just simply breaking up your bouts of sitting, whether that be standing desk, whether I get a call, I'm going to walk around, that really adds up. There's a study that I love from the Mayo Clinic, and it basically found that incidental physical activity, which is just like moving in daily life, that can add up to 800 calories across the course of a day. 800 calories burned. Like that is an insane amount. And yet we don't often think, oh, just this like extra walking I'm doing is really making a difference. But it really is. And so I think if people can take that mindset, it can really compound over the long term.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a lovely thing. That's what people from compounding quality love to hear. So you gain some extra followers or subscribers there.
Good deal. One thing that, as I was kind of looking at your work and the qualities you look for in businesses that you invest in, one that I thought was really interesting was you want businesses to have skin in the game. So,
Mm-hmm.
could you kind of talk to me about that? And where do you see the parallels between that in an investment sense, and then just from how you live daily life and make decisions?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think it's very easy in the sense that, well, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. In other words, how the other person, what he is incentivized to do, well, he will do the actions to reach his goal basically. And when we talk about it in the investment world, well, you see a lot of companies, a lot of big businesses where key management, the CEO, the CFO, and so on, they have their own personal agenda, meaning
Mhm.
I'm going to acquire my competitor because I'm the CEO and I'm managing a bigger business. My status is higher. Maybe I have a bonus linked to revenue and so on. And that's one of the reasons why 70% of all acquisitions destroy shareholder value, which
Mhm.
is which are basically really awful numbers. So what I always want is I want that key management has a significant stake in the business. So what I love to see, for example, is when the founder or the family of the founder is still involved in the company. They own 20% of the business and so on. It doesn't mean by definition that it will be a great investment, but it shows you that incentives are aligned and that management will do everything they possibly can to create shareholder value, which is also what you want. And you have a beautiful study there from Harvard Business Review as well that basically states, well, founder led companies, so businesses where the founder is still involved in the business, well, they are outperforming the S&P 500, for example, by almost 4% per year. And when you know that 90% of all professional investors underperform the market, so they do worse, and by just very simply buying founder-led businesses, you outperform by 4%. I think that's something beautiful, because when you can outperform the market by 4% per year on average for a decade, for 10 years, you will probably do better than 95 to 99% of all investors, which is quite funny if you think about it, because it's very straightforward and a very easy strategy to use. And that's also something I'm doing with compound equality. For example, well, I'm writing about investments, I'm writing about stocks. Um, I'm charging a subscription fee for the portfolio. It is as it is. It also means two things. I think people have the right to know in which companies I'm invested. And two, well, all my investable assets should be invested there. And same as with the founder led businesses, it doesn't mean that every company you pick will be a great investment, but it does mean that when it isn't, I will be alongside you, and I did what I thought was best, but we are in this together. So I think that's important. And probably the same with health, right? If you have a right incentives, you have a beautiful book from James Clear about atomic habits. Well, put some fruits inside of you instead of the junk food, or the some unhealthier options. So I'm also curious how you look about incentives in general. Are there ways you can, in some way, maybe trick your brain, quote unquote, to help you live a healthier life, to move more, to eat more vegetables, more fruit, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I'll answer that two ways. One thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about skin in the game is that I do a lot of writing on why doing things that are challenging in the short term give us these long term rewards and benefits. And there's a lot of research that I write about on 2% that basically shows the harder you have to work for something, the more you value it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to right now say give you $2 million, you would say, "Oh, well, thank you. That was great. This is great." At the same time, if you had to work to get that same $2 million, you would value that so much more. And there's probably good evolutionary reasons for that. It's like this mechanism that evolved in humans that the harder it was to have to get something you needed to survive, you needed that to be really rewarding to incentivize you to have to do that hard thing again over and over and over. And so I think you see that in the modern world where we really do value the things that are hard to get. And I think that probably transfers over to why someone like a founder is gonna perform better because
Mm-hmm.
they've put in all this work. They have this story of, oh, I had to do all this hard work to build this business. I really value and appreciate this business, and I've gotten more rewards from it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just more incentivized and emotionally tied to making sure that that succeeds. Whereas someone who just kind of gets plopped in, they don't have that story to lean on, and they're not as incentivized to continue working hard and going the extra mile. Um, the second part of the answer is when we talk about how do I start to develop healthy habits. So to me, most people already know what they should be doing, right? It's don't
Mm-hmm.
eat a bunch of junk food, eat more unprocessed food, go for a walk or a run sometime, lift some weights. We already know what to do. So the question to me is really, why aren't you doing those things? Right? And so I think a lot of times it is worth investigating what is holding me back from doing the healthy things rather than how can I add more healthy things onto this schedule I
Mm-hmm.
have. The question is not how do I walk more? It goes, well, why do I sit so much? And then work from there and try and weave those healthy habits into your life because it's kind of akin to a lot of people have their foot on the brake with bad habits and then they try and hit the gas with these healthy habits, but it's like you're not going to get anywhere. If you can just remove some of your bad habits and get to the fundamental reason why you do them in the
Mm-hmm.
first place. And I've written about this on 2%. There's a post, if people search S-R-O, it'll come up. Um, really removing the bad habits, I think, does way more good than trying to add a bunch of gas to good new habits.
Makes a lot of sense. And it takes 3 weeks to build a habit, right? So it goes faster than you would expect.
Yeah, I think that I think it can be shorter or longer for some people. I think that incentives change. You know, some people will just hit a point in their life where they go, I need to change right now. And that adoption phase is very quick. They turn around overnight. Some people can take years of fits and starts to finally lose weight or stop drinking or whatever it might be. But the point though, the fundamental thing where they overlap is that improvement is often challenging, right? Humans are wired to do the next easiest, most comfortable thing, even when it doesn't serve us in the long run. So that's what the 2% name of
Mm-hmm.
my Substack is all about. It's that 2% of people take the stairs when there's also an escalator available. Even though everyone knows taking the stairs is a better long term decision for their health, 98% of people do the easy thing. So I think to
Yeah.
me, living well today really is about being willing to do the thing that is slightly harder in the short term that you know will give you a long term return. And I think there's a lot of parallels, as we were saying, to investment where it's like, you know, people don't want to just sit and wait. We want to feel like we're doing something, but sitting and waiting, although uncomfortable, is often the thing you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And there are, I think it's exactly the same. The seeing it's all about in health and also in wealth. It's all about
Mhm.
the delayed gratification part. And also, that's a sad thing to see to some extent, obviously, is from my side, I'm looking for companies with in a secular trend. And with a secular trend, I mean a structurally growing end market.
Mhm.
And you have the trend of aging, okay, that's not directly linked to health, or at least to some extent. But for example, also like the obesity companies like Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly. Okay, Novo Nordisk is yeah, not doing well recently, but over time, over the past few years, over the past few decades, they have done amazingly well. And it's exactly because of what you say. People, unfortunately, are getting a bit lazier. We are getting a bit overweight. And there are some companies that are benefiting from that. Obviously, you can make the point from an ethical point of view whether you want to invest in something like that. But you indeed see that companies in offering obesity solutions, offering hearing aids from aging population and so on, they are doing really well just because demand is surging basically.
Yeah. How do you? So, one thing that I think is interesting is that markets go up and down all the
Mm-hmm.
time. How do you personally try to sort of keep your mental health in a good place when you see things starting to drop?
The funny thing is, I don't care too much, and probably you have tried to wire yourself a bit doing that by reading a lot of books, by reading about a lot of manias, stock market crashes, and so on. So, what we recently see indeed, the markets are declining a bit, but in hindsight, when you zoom out even 1 year, nothing has happened. So, I think it's if you are panicking right now, I would try to zoom out a bit because yeah, stock market crash. For example, Berkshire Hathaway is the best investment conglomerate in the world, right? And since 1965, they have declined by over 50% 4 times. So
Mhm.
that's what happens in the stock market from time to time. And it's important to just zoom out, focus on the long term, and focus on the intrinsic value of the business. If stocks are going down by 20%, but what, according to you, of course, the business is worth is stable or hopefully is growing, I think that's a great sign, and that's a great sign to keep buying even more. One trick that people who are listening can maybe use and who have some difficulties with the declining stock market is just one, don't check the stock prices every single day, and two, when you log into your broker, just hide what your total portfolio is worth, because that's the I hope that everyone who is investing doesn't have the intention to sell tomorrow or sell next month, and that you are in this for the long term. And from that perspective, it doesn't matter whether your portfolio today is 1 million or 990,000 or 1.1 million. It's all about the long term. And if you are a net buyer of stocks, meaning that if you are adding to your stocks over the next few years, for example, because you are still working, I think in that case it could be really smart to invest a certain percentage of your income in stocks every single month. Well, in that case, you should actually be praying for lower stock prices, which doesn't feel like that from a gut feeling, but it is exactly like that. So for me, I'm basically getting a bit excited to see declining stock prices, because a lot of stocks that I have been following for a while right now that have been, in my opinion, way too expensive. Well, they are starting to become more attractive. And what you also, one last point maybe here. Well, in the long term, stocks always go up. When you invested $1 in stocks in 1800, so over 200 years ago, you would have over 20 million today. So $1 turns into 20 million, which is ridiculous. And when you look at the chart, it just goes like this. And what's happening today, you wouldn't even notice it in the long term chart. So I think that's a great way to think about it. Talking about that, and maybe one last thing. Indeed, I think there's also a famous saying: sell down to your sleeping level. Obviously, it depends on yourself. If you are getting stressed, that's not a good sign. I'm lucky in the sense that I sleep like a baby. I lay down and I'm gone basically until my alarm clock goes in the morning. Do you have any tips for people to improve their sleep level, or some rituals you should do before you go to sleep?
Yeah. I'll hurry and add something about how you talked about not looking at the changing numbers every single day. So for this book, Scarcity Brain, I spent a lot of time looking at how slot machines work and why do slot machines captivate people. Because I live in Las Vegas, slot machines are everywhere. People play them all day, even though everyone knows the house always wins, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like just completely irrational. And why they really work is that they hinge on unpredictable rewards. So
Mm-hmm.
humans are drawn to changing numbers that are going to be unpredictable, right? When you open that browser to see your stocks, you don't know if it's going to be up, you don't know if it's going to be down, and that wondering is exciting. It's exactly what makes gambling work, right? When the dice are rolling, you don't know if it's going to be a 7, if it's going to be an 8, if it's going to be a 6.
Mm-hmm.
When the slot machine reels are spinning, you don't know if you're going to lose, if you're going to win $1, if you're going to win $100,000. And the real key that made slot machines rise in popularity in the 80s is that they sped up the feedback. So they made slot machines a lot faster to play. And so I think there are parallels to the market there too. Whereas if you have an investment that you know it rarely changes, you're just kind of
Mm-hmm.
sitting it out, you're rarely going to look at that. But when we deal with markets that are changing all the time, those numbers captivate us and they lead us to panic, they lead us into anxiety, even though over the long term, when we pull out, like you said, they're going to be rising.
Yeah,
Now, in terms
exactly.
of sleep, I think sleep is really important for decision making. So you look at all the data, and basically, people who sleep 5 hours a night or less, they make poor decisions. They also are more likely to eat more and be overweight. So people who sleep 5 hours a night, they tend to increase their calorie intake 700 more calories a day compared to someone who sleeps 8 hours. And so that really just adds up.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to be less healthy, you're going to make poor decisions. I think one of the main things that people can do to improve sleep is I'll name a few. One is to find a regular time that you go to bed. So make it say 10 o'clock. I'm good. This is when I'm going to try and go to bed every night. I also think sleeping in cooler temperatures seems to help people most of the time. In terms of sleeping in a black silent room, I think you actually don't have to do that. There's actually a lot of data that suggests some people sleep better with like a TV on and low. Some people need black, but it's really just like figure out what sort of sleep environment helps you best and build that. And then I'll also say that getting outside every single day, that seems to do some really good things for circadian rhythms and sort of primes your body to be ready to go to bed once you
Mm-hmm.
actually do go to bed and you tend to get better sleep. And also, 8 hours a night, that's a myth. Most people sleep about 7 hours a night. That seems to be totally fine. Some people sleep 6.5 and they're totally fine. Some people need 8.5. So not worrying if your sleep isn't that 8 hours that you've probably heard is the number you must need. That's a myth.
Okay, perfect. No, I truly enjoyed this. So yeah, I generally want to thank you. And obviously, I ordered your 3 books on Amazon just before our
Amazing.
meeting. So I'm truly looking forward to that. And if you, I would highly encourage everyone who didn't hear about Michael yet to do so. And obviously, I've been reading 2% for quite a while now. So I think in the end, probably true wealth is that you have a close relationship with your loved ones, that you are in great mental health, and
Mhm.
that you can have all the money in the world. If you're not healthy, it's the only thing you will want. So, obviously, in that case, I think you are doing an amazing job, and people should check you out.
Yeah, and likewise, everyone check out Compounding Quality. I think it's not only are you going to get great investment advice, I think there's also so many parallels to how you should think about health decisions, how you should think about risk and balancing risk, how you should think about just everyday decisions that really affect people, really come through in your writing, and I appreciate that about it.
Thank you. Had a lovely talk. Let's do it again soon, and have a lovely day.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thanks
Bye
for
for
watching.
now.